Hello, very good evening. In today's lecture, we will learn about Maya's command line and how we can use this command line to write very quick commands to create and select and deselect or even delete objects. This is a very useful feature that you can use to create and manipulate many of the objects very easily and very quickly using commands. Similarly, we have something called feedback, why and how we can use that. Later on in future classes, we will go into more deep and we will learn more about MEL and how we can use a script editor to control and write more advanced scripts. Okay, so let's start with the basic scripting using something called the command line. My name is Dr. Zishan Bhatti. If you're here for the first time, please don't forget to subscribe this channel, hit that bell icon so that you receive these tutorials regularly and you receive the notifications about them whenever I post them. Let's begin. Now, command line is basically a very cool feature within Maya that is very underrated, but it has some power to it, and it is used to write commands to create objects. Sometimes we use quick commands to create objects. Obviously, for example, in order to create object, we go into a polygon primitive and we create it from here, and this is where 99% of people tend to do that. However, you can do the same thing using command line as well. So for example, once you go into it, create polygon and you create a cube here, so you see it gives you a cube on the viewport. However, this is the feedback. This feedback is something that will give you a result of what it created. In this result, it will tell you something of a code as well. It created a pcube1 and polycube1 shape node. Okay, so a translate and a shape nodes were created for this particular object. These two nodes can be found in attribute editor as well. So if you go into attribute editor, you find pcube1, which is the translate node. As we know, Maya is heavily based on a node based structure. So this is one node that is concerned with the translate of this object. This is the shape node that defines the shape. In other words, the shaded area of this object, how this shaded area is supposed to be tessellate and rendered within our viewport and later on in the render view. So these two nodes are created within our one line command. Then polycube1 as an object, this node is also created, which controls the dimensions of this object. So technically, when we create an object, we get these three shape nodes with it. Associate with it is something called the shading network nodes again. Initial shading network group, which group it belongs to, and then the material that is associated with this thing. So this is how basically when we create a default object, the 4 or 5 nodes are associated. All this can be done also by using a single command called polycube. So if you write polycube in your command line, press enter, the same thing will execute. It will create polycube1 and polycube1 shape node. The polycube1 and polycube shape node is created. The object node is created. The shading group and Lambert also is created. Similarly, you can create any poly object. So for example, poly SPHE sphere. If I click here, now I get a poly sphere that is also created similarly on my grid as well. Same thing, we can create, for example, poly CY cylinder or poly torus or whatever object you want to create. You press enter, that object is created. This is what we call the command line. So this is a single line command that we execute most of the time. Single line commands we execute here. You can execute multi commands as well, separated by semicolon, but you can do that. Similarly, we can write, for example, select polycube1, and I think yes, if I press enter and my polycube1 node is selected. So you can select various nodes here as well with respect to simply using something called a select command. So you write select and then whatever object node you want to select, you can select that command. Even for example, Lambert 1, if I press enter, then the Lambert 1 material node is selected. So using this, you can select very quickly any materials you want to work with rather than going into hypershade and you want to select a node or digging down into channel box, finding an object. If you have named your object correctly within your channel box, you can select that object. So for example, if I rename this into my cube, okay, so now this becomes my cube. I can come here and I can say, if I deselect it now, I can say select my cube cube, press enter and my cube is selected. So that's why whenever we work with Maya, we always recommend that you name your objects properly, you name your nodes properly, so that once you work with these nodes, you can very easily select. So for example, I can say ring. I rename this to ring. Now I can come here and I can say select ring, and this ring object is selected. Okay. The advantage of this is that if you have the shelf available, so if I come here, window, I think GUI elements and shelf, I can create my own custom shelf here, come here and create, click on this object and create a new shelf, name it, for example, right now temp. I can say select ring and now this becomes my basically what we refer to in terms of my command. I can select this command. Okay, let me correct the spelling. SELECT select ring. I can select this command, middle mouse, drag and drop it onto this thing. I think my middle mouse is not working. Okay, my middle mouse is not working right now, but you can middle mouse, and again, sorry, my middle mouse is not working. So you can put this command on your shelf as well by simply clicking and middle mouse drag and drop onto the shelf, and then you can have a script that will select a particular object. So if you're working with a rigging model, you can select your rigs and rig components and roof by simply very quickly selecting on a button as well. So this becomes very helpful. Similarly, if you assigned it a particular material, so for example, if I right click on it, assign new material to this guy, and I assign it a blend material. Let me rename that blend into, for example, or usually what I do is empty blend wood, for example. So this becomes my name of this particular material. I can select that same thing here. So I come into here, I can write select and my blend my material, press enter. Oops, as spelling mistake. Again, just remember, make sure you type these words very clearly. So my spelling mistake is there, SELECT, select material, and my blend material is selected. Okay, so this is where it becomes more useful. If you have renamed your components clearly, if it's a rig, if it's a controllers, if it's materials, you can very quickly come here, type select and write the name of that particular component that you want to select. Similarly, you can deselect or delete as well. So I can use select, delete, ring, and I think sorry, it's detect, DELECT, and delete. Okay, spelling mistake, delete, ring, and my object is deleted as well. Okay, so sometimes it's easy to just select and delete if these are 2 3, but if you have a big hierarchy and lots of materials are there and you want to delete an object, but it's difficult to select, if you name them properly, you can delete them, you can create them, you can rename them as well, and lots of commands can be processed as well. Most of these commands we technically go into script editor and we write detailed scripts and we execute that. We will be doing that in future classes as well. So if you subscribe my channel, you will get more lectures on MEL in my future classes, in which we will work with more MEL commands later on. But for now, this simple select, this simple command line is very useful in order to select components, naming components, creating components. So whatever object you want to create, you can type its name. Obviously it's here as well, but it's good to know that you have this thing available. Okay, and you can rename, you can multiple select, whatever you want. So hopefully it becomes a little bit useful for you. And the feedback bar is basically where you get the feedback. So for example, if I use SELECT select my CUBE cube, it will select my cube. But if I write SELECT select my CUBE cube again, this time it gives me an error. So it says no object matches the name my cube. That's because this has capital C. Another thing to be very careful of, when we write commands, we need to be sure that we use case sensitivity as it has been given. In other words, if you have capital C here, make sure you use capital C here as well. If you use small c here, then make sure you have small c here. Any spelling mistakes with a case sensitive will generate an error. So this is where feedback lines come into our help. It gives you an error indicating that what's the issue, your command is not working. Like previously, if I misspelled select again, okay, and now I give the name, for example, my CUBE cube, again it gives me an error, cannot find procedure select. So this time it will tell you that there's no issue with the name of the object, however the spelling of this particular procedure, this function is not very clear. So this basically is what the function is, SELECT select, or in terms of here it refers to in terms of procedure, and this object is selected. Okay, so command line, feedback line gives you feedback. If everything is okay, there is no issue, no error, it will be normal thing. If you create a new object, so for example, if I write polycylinder and just press enter, polycylinder is created, and you will get a feedback here. I think I've just moved it a little bit quickly. So I come back here and I press up arrow to bring back my old command, and my feedback is here. So you can use up arrow to access your previous commands as well. So if you're coming from DOS, this is something similar to DOS, not exactly same, but you can access your previous commands as well. So you don't have to type everything again and again. So polycylinder, if I need to create another one, I just press another. I can come here, press up arrow, or it will give me my previous command, press enter, and I can have another polycube here as well. As soon as an object is created, The feedback line will give you the feedback this polycylinder is created. You can rename these objects from here and then use that renamed object. You can assign them materials. If those materials are correctly renamed, you can use those command line to select those materials as well. Okay, hopefully this is useful, and we will dive into MEL commands a little bit more in further lessons. So if you are here till the end, thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. Please support. 80% of my viewers are not my subscribers. Please do subscribe, support this channel so I can post more videos and helpful videos for you. If you have any problem within the MEL and the command line, don't forget to leave your comment so I can reply to them, and we will try to make a video of that as well. Thank you very much for watching.